Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of State Champs eSports. I'm Denver, and today I'm going to be playing the one of the greatest games of all time, Asteroids, on the Atari 2600. Before we get started, let me first thank our sponsors. Let's start with Lawrence Technological University, who is our presenting sponsor, and without them, we would not be able to do this. Visit their website, ltu.edu, for more information. And we also need to thank Army Michigan. They've got a great eSports program, so go check out their Twitch channel and see what they've got going on. A lot of exciting stuff. And finally, can't forget about Hungry Howie's Pizza. They're famous for flavor. They got that great flavored crust that they invented all those years ago. And they are definitely open for business, so go online, order all your pizza and salads and everything else that they have to offer, and play some games while you're chowing down. All right, let's get started. As you can see, I'm in what is supposed to be a little spaceship, although it really is just a pixelated triangle. And we've got these huge boulders or asteroids that you have to shoot and break up into little tiny chunks until they're all gone, without, of course, getting hit by any of the asteroids themselves. Ooh. Now you can see I am doing a technique where I just play stationary. I find that at least in these early stages, it's a lot easier to do it that way. Oh, just got a free guy. Now, once things get a little bit more populated with asteroids and it gets a little bit more complex and challenging, then you'll have to use your thrusters and your teleporter, or warping, I guess, whatever kind of terminology you used or maybe didn't use if you're just seeing this game for the first time, but I think we called it teleporting, at least when I was a kid growing up, playing this in the arcade, which is where I first played this game. It was really one of my favorite games for sure, and it was also a lot of other people's favorite games because Asteroids was actually Atari's biggest selling... Oh, they got me. Anyway, I was saying Asteroids is one of Atari's, if not biggest, I think it's right up there, coin-operated games. A lot of the Atari 2600 games that, at least the ones that we've talked about so far over the last week or so as I've been playing all these games, they are ports of coin-op games, except for Pitfall. But none of the games were originally developed or designed by Atari. But Asteroids was an Atari coin-op creation, and they made millions of dollars off the coin-op game. So, of course, when they were putting together the 2600, Asteroids was right up there at the top of the list of games that they had to port over. And I gotta be honest, this game is really not all that different from the arcade game. We've seen, for example, with Pac-Man, where the port is just not anything like the original coin-op game, and this is very, very close. I would even say maybe an improvement. The original coin-op was just a vector, just outlines. It's a vector game, so it's a black screen with white lines, basically, and white dots. Oh, looks like I got another free life. And with this 2600 version, we've got colors, although I'm not sure why Asteroids would be multicolored, but, you know, perhaps a planet blew up or something like that, I don't know. But it's definitely I think, a better looking game, and the gameplay itself is very, very similar. So, as far as ports go, I would say this is right up there. Oh, I knew I was gonna be cutting out a little bit close here. Okay. I'll take you through some different techniques that I used to use as a kid. I experimented, spent lots of quarters playing this game, and had some fun doing it as well. And as I've mentioned in earlier episodes, most of my Atari cartridges were ports from arcade games, because I spent a lot of time in arcades. Oh, bummer. So I spent a lot of time in arcades growing up, so when I got the Atari, I wanted to play the same games that I loved. Playing in the arcade. Oh, there's one left. I thought it was clearing the board. Alright, yeah, now we're starting to get nice and full. But yeah, these asteroids are quite a rainbow coalition here. Now, we'll start getting into it a little bit after this round. But you can also, you don't have to be stationary like I am. You've got a thruster. It's basically just a one-directional thruster, just goes forward. So if you want to turn and go in the opposite direction, you just have to turn your ship and manually. So there's no reverse, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's also a teleporter. The problem with the teleporter, which is why I didn't often use it as a kid, was that it could put you in a worse spot than where you are. The teleporter is kind of good for this stage of a board or level, where there's not many asteroids out there, so the odds of you getting teleported directly into the path. Oh, shoot. Now this kind of scenario, you would never want to teleport just because there's too many asteroids. You're bound to get put right into the path. Ooh. Alright. Now I will say Atari loves their non-musical games. We played Frogger yesterday, and it was such a pleasure because you had all those great kind of Americana folk songs, and it actually sounded, for as crude as the 2600 sound capabilities were, it actually sounded pretty pleasant, whereas this kind of is along more of the Space Invaders model, where I think it's the sound or music is really more to get you stressed out and add tension. Okay, good. I got a free life. Give me a little breathing room here. But yeah, a lot like the Space Invaders, when the aliens are getting closer and closer, that music really starts to get intense and annoying. To be honest with you, that's like the only downfall I think of this game. Otherwise, it's a great game, and having not played it in years, all the warm and fuzzy memories of me playing my Atari in my living room on Saturday mornings and afternoons, it's all coming back to me. And as I have mentioned in previous episodes, I'll be playing some coin-op games later on after I kind of make my way through the bulk of the Atari 2600 games that I wanted to play. Which reminds me that if you have a game that you'd like to play, like me to play, just leave that in the comments for me, and I'm sure I'll be able to find it and do a few rounds here for everybody. I didn't have many Atari cartridges, to be honest with you, so I didn't realize just how many games there were. There's games I had never even heard of. And I know some of those are kind of, I guess you could say, like bootlegs or undergrounds. But even some of the other games, I never knew there was an Alien Atari 2600 game. I mean, I'm a huge sci-fi and Alien movie fan. And the fact that I just found out about it before we started doing this live stream is pretty amazing. I do also produce a show called Comic Experience Sci-Fi, and we had reviewed a bunch of Spider-Man games on that show. And one of the, I think if not one of, if maybe the first ever Spider-Man video game was for the Atari 2600. So I definitely gotta give that one a whirl. Alright, man, I'm doing way better than I imagined I would do. I did a little test round before we started, and didn't fare so well. But maybe doing all this talking is kind of taking my mind off of things and de-stressing me. So I think that's a lot of times what happens with these games is the nerves kick in and you make stupid little mistakes and you start to flub things up. As you can see, the faster you can fire, the better off you are. And of course you want to shoot the asteroids that are closest to you, at least their trajectories are as close to you. There we go. Now the only downside with not using your thrusters is that your fire doesn't go all the way across the screen. So those asteroids that are kind of lingering on the outer edges of the screen, you just really gotta kind of wait for them to slowly make their way to you. So this is definitely kind of the patience is a virtue strategy that we were using yesterday for Frogger. There's some games where you just gotta really move quickly. Here you don't have to move very quickly, but you do have to fire quickly. It's pretty much just a kind of a rapid fire strategy. You gotta just keep shooting. Now what I enjoy about Asteroids is it's a lot faster moving, say, than Space Invaders. Even though Space Invaders can get very fast moving towards the end of the board when the aliens are getting closer to you. But with that game, you've got to wait for your missile to be entirely off the screen. So if you miss one of the aliens, it does have a tendency to really kind of slow the gameplay down. Also makes it harder, so it makes you really want to make sure your aim is good on those. Ooh, we got one that was lurking over there. There we go. Okay. Let's see how long I can take this. And you see too, a lot of times when the board is full, I don't even bother moving. I just aim in the same direction and just let the asteroids kind of come into my path. Now, obviously, when you get down to the end of the level and you're just dealing with the little tiny pieces, you don't always have the luxury of waiting. And of course, obviously, if there's pieces that are kind of floating your way, you want to make sure to hit those. And I will say, this seems to be incredibly easy to get extra lives. Every time I die, there's a free play right around. I wonder if I can make it to 100,000. You know, one thing that we haven't talked very much about is the kill screen or the end screen. I don't know if Asteroids has an end screen. I was never good enough at the time to make it. Most of the games that I had, I did not finish if that was an option. Probably because as a 8, 9, 10-year-old, my attention span was just too short. I would be on to the next game. That's not to say that I would like quit games and never come back to them. I did kind of have a tendency to cycle through games. Ooh, they got me. Ooh, that was close. But yeah, I would never become obsessed with one game in particular enough to where I could really finish it off. Ooh, that guy's getting close. Steer him off. That's really one of the main skills with Asteroids is knowing when a chunk is headed in your direction, being able to anticipate, oh, I swung too soon. A lot of times you can pivot your ship around. Uh-oh. I think I'm coming near my end. Ooh, free guy. Ah, maybe I spoke too soon. Like I said, every time I die, I get another free guy. Free life, as I used to call it. I remember I had an uncle who didn't like video games because he thought it gave the wrong impression that you could just die and respawn, and he thought it was a negative concept of dying and coming back, because in real life you can't die and come back. But as a kid, I always equated it to any other game. Maybe it was just bad terminology, but if you played a game of basketball and you lost, that doesn't mean you died and you're never able to play again. You just had to wait until the next game. So perhaps it was just the fact that it was bad lingo. And obviously, as we have seen, video games really aren't attributable to any sort of violence in culture. I know oftentimes whenever there's a big tragedy or mass shooting or something happens, people try to bring out that old chestnut of blaming the games. But if you're not prone to violence before, a game is certainly not going to make you become violent. Because believe me, all the games that I played over the years, I mean, when I was a kid, I was addicted, and I killed off so many people and aliens and other things that I should be a mass murderer many times over. But I will get off my soapbox and stop preaching and concentrate on playing this game. Ooh, another life. Oh boy, I think 100,000 is going to be coming my way very easily. I don't want to get cocky about it, but I'm already at 75,000. It's funny, most of the games that I've played so far have been multiple games or multiple lives or rounds, however you want to describe it. I think this is the longest I've gone so far in one continuous game. So I don't want to, of course, jinx myself, but this might be the first time where the entire stream or show is just all one game. That would be surprising and shocking even to myself. Now, I did say that this was one of my favorite games, so I guess if I was going to be doing this well with any of them, it would be Asteroids. I mean, I have played the coin-op game or version fairly recently. It's really only the Atari 2600 version that I haven't played in, geez, probably nearly 40 years. That's aging myself, huh? And I will have to say that doing these live streams every night have been kind of a welcome relief during this quarantine period. It's a little way to take your mind off things. So if it's gaming for you or whatever other distractions you can do to keep yourself sane, by all means, do it. For me, the kind of the combination of concentration on the game and nostalgia for the childhood video games that I played, it's it just seems to be this great combination. Okay, now here's a little strategy, because I was going to wait until I died and had to restart my game, but I used to do this thing where I would just spin and shoot, and that never really worked. It actually works better when you can thrust and shoot. But I don't want to, that's kind of a dangerous, the thrusting and shooting method. I kind of do like a pinwheel effect, which I'll show you. But it's kind of reckless and wild. It's can be pretty effective, but since I'm doing so well here, I don't want to just wildly waste away what I've got going. Ooh, bummer. But hey, I've got 5 lives. What am I worried about? Difficulty setting. This seems to be much easier than I ever remember it being. Yeah, like I mentioned, sometimes when you try to chase the asteroids, it's actually worse than just staying stationary and letting them cross your path. Because eventually they will cross your path, it's just a matter of timing. And I was going to talk a little bit more about the success of Asteroids in future rounds, but since this first game seems to be going so well, I might as well just talk about it now. But Asteroids is actually one of the most successful games for Atari. I think it is the most successful, as I mentioned, for the coin-op, but also for the 2600. It's the third ranked, or I should say the third biggest selling game for the Atari 2600, right behind Pitfall and Pac-Man. So that, if this tells you how successful the game was, it did better than Frogger and Space Invaders and a lot of the other big games. So this is really, you know, one of the classic, one of the best games for the Atari 2600. And like I said, it's one of the best probably reviewed games as well for the 2600. It's not just myself, but a lot of critics at the time and even now in retrospect have ranked this as probably in the top 10 Atari games of all time. In which I guess it makes sense, because with Pac-Man, for example, when they made the port, they didn't have access to any of the people who made the original Pac-Man game. They just had the designer for the 2600 just play the game. Whereas with Atari, since it was all in-house, it, I'm sure, made the process of converting it over from coin out to cartridge much, much easier. And from what I know, the Atari also was able to do a dual bank or double bank technique, which was able to like double the amount of memory or storage for the game. I'm not very techy, so don't get hung up or expect me to know all the computer jargon. I just know how to play the games. I don't know how exactly they all work. But you know who does? The folks at Lawrence Tech. They have a great game art and game design programs at the university, which is located in Southfield, Michigan. So if you are a high school student and you want to study how to make video games, go to ltu.edu and check out their pages on the Game Arts program. They were going to have a really big event called LTUX, which they've done for the last several years, and it was going to be coming up in April, I believe, and it was all dedicated to showing off the games that their students make and having kind of local and independent game developers and designers bring their games in for people to play and test out. They're also, of course, going to have eSports competitions. There's going to do League of Legends finals for, I think, a Michigan-based competition, kind of a college level tournament. Unfortunately, with COVID-19 outbreak, they've had to push that back into the fall. So it's a great event, so I definitely recommend you checking it out. They don't have a new date as of yet, but as soon as they do, we will post it on our State Champs eSports social media. So just make sure to keep an eye out for that. LTU also has a new eSports varsity team that they're going to be starting up in the fall as well. At least that was the plan. I'm not sure if that's changed since. Oh, I just passed 100,000, but it looks like it won't give me 100,000, so I'm back to 11,000. That's it. So I flipped. We used to call that flipping. I flipped the game. That's when your score will go higher than the game counter will allow you to go. And so I used to remember, and maybe it was Asteroids, but there were certain games where we had to have a notepad of paper and we would write down how many times we flipped the game so we knew exactly what our actual score was. So obviously if it only goes to 100,000 and you flip it 5 times, and that means you got 500,000. So let's see if I can I can flip it again. I'm just shocked that I was able to flip it in the first place. And since I've got some time here, let's talk a little bit about Army Michigan. They came on board with us last fall for our Rocket League tournament, which we will be streaming some games this week. We had a couple of games last week from Kevin, State Champs Kev, as he calls himself, who essentially runs our Rocket League tournament for us. He's our in-house expert, and he'll be streaming, and I think he's going to be bringing in some other players, and he'll just do some shoutcasting and announce the action that he plays. So after we did our Rocket League tournament and everything seemed to go well, it was our first year doing it this past fall, we were proud and pleased that U.S. Army Michigan Recruiting, that's their Facebook page, wanted to continue on for our League of Legends tournament, and that's going on right now, actually. We will hopefully have an update for that soon, and I'd like to get some games streamed off of that. But since we've had some extra time on our hands working from home during the quarantine, I decided to also do, in addition to the League of Legends and the Rocket League, I wanted to do some classic games that I grew up playing. Really just for the fun of it, but also to expose some of maybe the younger viewers out there to the games that we grew up playing. Really, this was, Atari 2600 was not the first home video game system, but certainly one of them, and probably the first, mainstream, really popular version. And so you could see just how long we've come since those days. But as is a sign of any true classic, be it movie, book, or video game, it holds up over time. Obviously, we acknowledge the rudimentary nature of the work of art, but it still can entertain and is still enjoyable all these years later. That is a true sign of a classic. Now, we're not going to be just playing classic games. We're also going to be playing some clunkers, which I already played Pac-Man for the Atari 2600, which, if you didn't see that episode, the Pac-Man for the Atari 2600 is considered one of the worst ever video games. Certainly the worst port of a video game from coin-op to home computer or home console. I think the Atari 2600 was actually originally called a Video Computer System, VCS for short. I believe they considered it, a computer, which essentially it was, but you could only do one thing on the computer, which was play games. So yeah, we're going to be playing some bad games as well. So talking about the classic here today, but I am dying to play E.T. because that really is considered to be the worst game of all time, and certainly the most infamous or notorious game of all time, because while it sold a lot of copies, I think it's maybe the 5th biggest selling Atari 2600 game, they printed or they manufactured so many cartridges that went unsold that even though it sold quite a few cartridges, it actually wound up really almost killing the early home video game industry. And I've talked about this in previous episodes, but there's a great documentary about the urban legend that there's a landfill out west that it was just dumped full of ET cartridges, and spoiler alert, they do in fact find the landfill, and they found a whole bunch of ET games. Also a lot of Pac-Man games. And for the life of me, I can't remember what the name of that documentary is. I'll look it up and post it in the comments. Alright, can I flip it twice? Normally I cap these streams to about 20-30 minutes, but who am I to stop myself when I am on such a roll? Although, you know what I will do is I'm gonna make this a little bit more challenging for myself, and I'm gonna show you the thrusters. Ooh, see, it's very hard to thrust properly. You can thrust a little bit better when the screen is not quite as populated. So that's what I was talking about, not having a reverse. If you want to get around, you just gotta point yourself in whatever direction you want to go and thrust. Now, one of the techniques that I was talking about was the pinwheel effect, where you just kind of float. I'm just free floating here, and didn't work out so good. Okay. See? You start getting wild with it, and look what happens. All hell breaks loose. Alright, I'm going to blast down some of these. Alright, now if you press, there's the teleport button, which you can, if you press down, it'll make you reappear in another part of the screen. So if you feel like you're getting in trouble, oh, but see, that's what happens. That's a perfect example of what happens. You teleport, a lot of times it'll teleport you right into the path, and that screen wasn't even barely full at all. There's almost no asteroids on that screen, and of course it teleported me right in front of a little teeny asteroid. That's why I never really was never good at teleporting, never kind of quite found the knack of it. But I did get pretty good at the thrusters, especially with the pinwheel effect. So now if you pinwheel and, well, no, that was a bad example. I was going to say if you thrust and pinwheel at the same time, that works pretty good. Now it's not very efficient. This will probably take you a lot longer, but a lot of times when I would get bored, I would just start pinwheeling around. It was almost like a random game of pin the tail on the donkey, if you will. Pin the laser blast on the asteroid. See, look at that. I just killed myself a bunch of times and already got a free guy. I think I might literally be able to go on doing this all night. Maybe that's why I liked Asteroids so much, because it was easy for me and I could just keep playing it, and I felt a sense of accomplishment, because so often when playing games I would get so frustrated that I would just break the controllers. Uh-oh, didn't mean to teleport. Let me see if I can return back to home here. So yeah, so a lot of games, were so frustrating. Not that I wasn't winning, but just I would get stuck at a certain point and just could never get past it. Pitfall was like that for me. There was many times that I just could not get past a certain stage. And would just get so infuriated. So those joysticks back in the day were not like the finely tuned, highly designed and manufactured controllers that they have today that are like super sensitive and you can adjust speeds and do all this other stuff. Nope, these were a stick and a button. Or some of the games there was what was called a paddle, which was just a knob that you could turn and a button. And they weren't very sensitive, and the more you played them, the least sensitive they got. And so, yeah, I bought a lot of Atari joysticks back in the day. Alright, come on, maybe. Let me check my notes here, see if I missed anything. Nope, not at all. Might as well give a plug to State Champs RoboZone, which is another show that I produce. That's all about high school competitive robotics. We mostly cover FIRST, but there's also VEX and drone racing and RoboFest. There's a lot of different robotic competitions at all levels, high school, middle school, even college. Last year we covered Bot Shot, I believe it was called, and we did that during the NCAA Final Four. And it was, teams had to build robots that could shoot basketballs into a hoop from various points on the court, and it was a pretty big event. They had some former college and NBA players there to kind of judge and help MC the event. A lot of fun. So yeah, a lot of great things going on in the robotics world. And there's definitely an overlap with gaming and robotics, because robotics teams use video game controllers to control their robots, and they have to do programming and coding just like if you were designing a video game. The only difference really is that there's also the engineering and building component. You got to be able to, machine parts and put them together and 3D print things. But it's definitely all along the same kind of geeky spectrum. And I say geeky in the best way possible. Like I said, I produced a show, still do, called Comics, Beer, and Sci-Fi, which is all about science fiction movies and comic books and TV shows and superhero movies. So yeah, I am a proud lifelong geek. Then of course, really how State Champs came into existence was the State Champs Sports. State Champs High School Sports, to be exact. Even though we have kind of dipped our toe into some Little League and college sports, but it's, I would say, 95% high school sports. And we've been doing that show for going on 15 plus years. So if you are into high school sports in Michigan and Indiana, definitely go check out our page for both of those. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. We've got apps for your iPhone and Android. We have OTT apps for Amazon Fire Stick, and Roku. So we are literally everywhere. There's no excuse not to find us, and you'll see some of our robotics and eSports on those apps. It's not just the high school sports. It's mostly the high school sports, but you can still get your fix of eSports and robotics. Alright, I'm very close to flipping the score yet again. Built back up my lives a little bit. Alright, let's go hunting. Let's go get some. Let me take a backdoor approach here. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I will have to say it is a little bit more fun when you're using the thrusters. It's definitely more of a challenge, and it's definitely a riskier game. And so, I guess if you don't want to make this thing drag out all night, well, oops. Teleport, didn't realize I teleported. That was an accidental teleportation. Or warping, or man, I know there was a term that we used. I think it was teleport, but man, I thought there was something else. Alright, I'm just gonna... Oh! Alright, let me flip it one more time. Flip it one more time. You know, a game I tried to play. I played it only a few times as a kid, but there was actually a Ghostbusters game for the Atari 2600. I tried to play it. Oh my god, it's horrible. I can't imagine that E.T. is a worse game. So, I've got to play E.T. I don't think I've ever actually played that. I've seen, you know, gameplay videos of it, but I don't know if I've ever actually tried it out for myself. So yeah, maybe I'll just do I'll do one day where I just play a bunch of like the worst games I could find, because I don't really know if you'd want to sit through 20 minutes or more of a really truly bad game. At least with Pac-Man, it was bad only really in relation to how good the coin-op version. I mean, Pac-Man to me has got to be one of the best games, right up there at the top. And so it was more of just a letdown and a disappointment that the 2600 version was so bad. Alright, once I flip it twice, I'll start going a little bit more adventurous and start spinning around. I think flipping it twice has proven to myself that I've still got it when it comes to playing Atari 2600. Come on, where you hiding, boy? Where you hiding? Slowly drifting here. Slowly drifting. Okay, so close, almost there. one thing I didn't talk about was all of the various versions and remakes and spin-offs, and so we've talked about this pretty much every episode, but in case you haven't heard any of the others, the true sign, kind of like movies and books and TVs, a true sign of success is that, you know, they keep remaking the game, or they keep doing sequels, and Asteroids was no different. There was many iterations and versions, and just for better or worse, it just goes to show you. Alright, now I'm just going to have some fun with it, folks. You push the thrusters, and you turn to the right or to the left as you're thrusting, and then you just fire randomly. It's the pinwheel effect. Ooh. See, when you've got a full screen, you've got to be really good to do this successfully, which, as you can see, I'm proving that I'm not good. The goal or the object is to keep moving. Ah, shoot. All right, well, flipped it twice, got the 200,000 score on Atari 2600 Asteroids. So thank you for watching. Remember to give support or show support to our sponsors for supporting us. That would be Lawrence Tech, Army Michigan, and Hungry House. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.